Alright. Good morning, hoops and hockey fans. Big Al here on this Monday, March 3rd, 2025, and welcome to our weekly check of the NBA and NHL standings, as I'll be taking a look at the current standings in both leagues and the playoff races as well. And before we begin, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and get notified every time I go live, and off we go. Starting off with the NBA standings, games played through March 2nd. And we're going to start, as always, in the Eastern Conference. As you know, the playoff structure in the NBA, the top 6 teams make the playoffs. The next 4, 7 through 10, all make the play-in tournament. So, as of right now, the Cleveland Cavaliers have the best record in the NBA at 50-10. They are the number 1 seed in the East. 28-4 record at home, 22-6 on the road, 9-1 versus the Central Division, and 33-7 versus the East. They will score an average of 123.1 points per game and allow 111.6. Average point differential is plus 11.5. They are 10-0 over their last 10 games, which means they are on a 10-game winning streak. The Boston Celtics are the 2 seed in the East at 43-18, 7.5 games behind the Cavs for first in the East. 19-11 at home, 24-7 on the road, 10-2 versus the Atlantic Division, 31-11 versus the East. They score 116.8 points per game and allow 108.2 points per game. Average point margin is plus 8.6. They have a 7-3 record over their last 10 games, including a win in their last game. The New York Knicks remain in the number 3 seed in the East at 40-20. They are 10 games out of first in the East behind the Cavs. 21-10 at home, 19-10 on the road, 10-3 versus the Atlantic, and they are 28-13 versus the East. They average 117.7 points per game and allow 112.9. Average point margin is plus 4.8. They are 7-3 in their last 10 games, including 3 straight wins. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Indiana Pacers are tied for the number 4 spot in the East, but based on tiebreakers, Milwaukee is number 4 and Indiana is number 5. Both teams are 34-25 and both are 15.5 games behind the Cavaliers for first in the East. The Bucks are 20-9 at home, 13-16 on the road, 6-5 versus the Central, and 25-16 in the East. They average 114.4 points per game while allowing 112.5 for an average point margin of plus 1.9. They're 7-3 in their last 10, including 2 straight wins. The Indiana Pacers, with the same overall record as the Bucks, they are 18-9 at home, 15-15 on the road, 7-4 versus the Central, 20-17 against the East. The Pacers average 116.6 points per game, allow 115.3. Average point margin is plus 1.3. They are 6-4 in their last 10, including a win in their most recent game. The Detroit Pistons are in the 6th spot at the present time at 34-27. They are 16.5 games out behind Cleveland for first in the East. 17-14 record at home, 17-13 on the road, 4-9 versus Central Division opponents, and 24-20 versus the East. They average 114.4 points per game and allow 113 for an average point margin of plus 1.4. They're 9-1 over their last 10 games, but they did win their most recent game, and this is after having their 8-game winning streak snapped on Friday night. The next 4 teams in the East would all make the play-in tournament. We'll start with the number 7 seed, the Miami Heat, current leaders of the Southeast Division with a record of 28-31. They are 21.5 games out behind the Cavs for first in the East. 14-12 at home, 13-19 on the road, 6-4 versus the Southeast, and 17-19 overall in the conference. They average 110.3 points per game, allow 110.9 points per game. Average point margin is minus 0.6. They are 3-7 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. In the number 8 spot and sitting second in the Southeast are the Orlando Magic. 29-33 record, 22 games behind the Cavaliers for first in the East. 18-14 at home, only 11-19 on the road. 8-3 versus the Southeast, 23-18 overall against the East. They average 104 points per game and allow 105.7. Average point margin is minus 1.7. They are 4-6 in their last 10, including 3 straight losses. The number 9 team in the East right now are the Atlanta Hawks, 27-33. 23 games out behind Cleveland for first in the East, so it's a pretty good chance they will not catch the Cavs for that number 1 spot. 13-15 record at home, 14-17 on the road, 7-4 versus the Southeast, 20-17 versus the East. They average 116.6 points per game and allow 119.5. Average point margin is minus 2.8. They are also 4-6 in their last 10 games, including 2 straight losses. The final team into the play-in tournament in that number 10 spot are the Chicago Bulls at 24-37, 26.5 games behind Cleveland. 11-21 at home, 13-16 on the road, 3-10 versus the Central, and 19-22 versus the East. They average 116.5 points per game while allowing 120.4. Average point margin is minus 3.9. They are 2-8 in their last 10 games, including a loss in their most recent matchup. On the outside of the playoffs in the East, you've got the Philadelphia 76ers sitting 11th in the East with a record of 21-38. 28.5 games behind the Cavaliers. 11-20 at home, 10-18 on the road. 3-9 versus the Atlantic. 14-24 versus the East. They average 109.2 points per game while allowing 113.5 for an average point margin of minus 4.3. They are ice cold. Only 1-9 in their last 10 games, but they did win their most recent game after a 9-game losing streak. In 12th place, you've got the Brooklyn Nets at 21-39, 29 games behind the Cavs. 9-20 at home, 12-19 on the road, 3-8 record versus the Atlantic, 12-26 in the East. They average 104.8 points per game, allow 111.3. Average point margin is minus 6.5, and they're starting to trend in the wrong direction. They are 4-6 in their last 10 games, including 4 straight losses. The Toronto Raptors sit in number 13 in the East at 19-42. So they'll finish with a losing record no matter what. They are 31.5 games out behind Cleveland, 13-19 at home, 6-23 on the road, 4-8 record versus the Atlantic, 12-28 versus the East. They average 110.3 points per game, allow 116.2 points per game. Average point margin is minus 5.9. They are 3-7 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. 14th place in the East are the Charlotte Hornets at 14-45, 35.5 games behind the Cavaliers. 9-21 at home, 5-24 on the road. They still have not won a divisional game. They are 0-11 versus the Southeast and 7-31 versus the East. They average 105.2 points per game while allowing 112.8 points per game. Average point margin is minus 7.6. They are 1-9 in their last 10 games, including 6 straight losses. And rounding out the Eastern Conference are the Washington Wizards, still sitting with the league's worst record at 11-48, 38.5 games behind the Cavs, 6-25 at home, 5-22 on the road, 6-5 record against the Southeast, which is respectable, and 9-25 versus the East. They average 108.4 points per game and allow 120.8. Average point margin is minus 12.4, which is also the worst in the league. They are 3-7 in their last 10, including a win in their most recent game. So again, the top 6 teams that would be in the playoffs as of games played on March 2nd are Cleveland at 50-10, Boston at 43-18, New York at 40-20, Milwaukee at 34-25. They're tied with Indiana, but the Bucks have the tiebreaker, so they're 4, and the Pacers are 5. And the Detroit Pistons at 34-27 would round out the top 6 in the East. The Miami at 28-31, Orlando at 29-33, Atlanta at 27-33. And Chicago at 24-37 would be the 4 teams to go into the play-in tournament. As it sits, Philadelphia is 2 games behind Chicago for that last play-in spot. Brooklyn has dropped to 2.5 games back. Toronto is a full 5 games back. Charlotte is 9 games back. And Washington is 12 games back as far as the 10 spot in the East. Moving on to the Western Conference, we'll start with the Oklahoma City Thunder, number 1 in the West with a record of 49-11, 25-4 record at home, 23-7 on the road, 9-3 versus the Northwest Division, 28-10 record versus the West. They're averaging 119.4 points per game while giving up 106.6. Average point margin is plus 12.7, which is the best in the NBA. They are 8-2 in their last 10, including 3 straight wins. The Los Angeles Lakers and the Denver Broncos, or rather the Denver Nuggets, are in a virtual tie for second in the West. Based on winning percentage, LA is the 2 seed while Denver is the 3. The Lakers are 38-21, 10.5 games behind the Thunder, 23-7 at home, 15-14 on the road, 11-3 versus the Pacific, and 26-12 versus the West. They average 112.7 points per game while allowing 111.1. Average point margin is plus 1.6 rather. The Lakers are 8-2 in their last 10, including 6 straight wins. And falling into the number 3 spot, just percentage points behind the Lakers, are the aforementioned Denver Nuggets at 39-22. Also 10.5 games behind OKC. 20-9 at home, 19-13 on the road, 6-4 versus the Northwest, 22-13 in the West. They average 121.1 points per game while allowing 116 points per game. Average point margin is plus 5.1. They have a 7-3 record over their last 10 games, including a loss in their most recent game. The Memphis Grizzlies have dropped to 4th in the West with a record of 38-22. They are 11 games behind the Thunder. 22-8 at home, 16-14 on the road, 8-5 versus the Southwest Division, and 21-15 versus the West. They average 123.2 points per game, which is tops in the NBA, and allow 116.7. Average point margin is plus 6.5. They're kind of cold right now. 4-6 in their last 10 games, including 2 straight losses. The Houston Rockets are the number 5 seed presently in the West at 37-23, 12 games behind OKC. 20-10 at home, 17-12 on the road, 10-3 record versus the Southwest, which is very impressive, and 22-15 versus the West. They average 112.6 points per game while only allowing 108.8. Average point margin is plus 3.8. They are 5-5 in their last 10 games, and they did lose their most recent game. The Los Angeles Clippers are presently the 6th seed in the West. In fact, they are tied with the same record as Golden State, and by percentage points, and by 1 percentage point, they're also tied with the Minnesota Timberwolves. But based on the tiebreakers, the Clippers would get the 6th seed. They are 32-28, 17 games back of the Thunder, 19-10 record at home, 13-18 on the road, 6-6 versus the Pacific, 20-20 versus the West. They average 110.6 points per game, allow 108.6 points per game. Average point margin is plus 2. They're 4-6 in their last 10, including 2 straight losses. Okay. Both the Warriors and Timberwolves would make the play-in tournament based on these tiebreakers. Golden State is number 7 in the West. 32-28 record, same as the Clippers. 17 games back of the Thunder, same as the Clippers. They are 17-13 at home, 15-15 on the road, but very bad versus the Pacific, only 2-10. And they are 20-19 versus the Western Conference. So they have a better conference record than the Clippers. Golden State averages 113 points per game, allow 111.4. Average point margin is plus 1.6. They are 7-3 in their last 10 games, including a loss in their most recent game, and that was the Sixers game on Saturday night. And the Minnesota Timberwolves would sit in the number 8 spot at 33-29, just 1 percentage point behind LA and Golden State. They are also 17 games back of Oklahoma City. 16-14 at home, 17-15 on the road, 7-5 versus the Northwest, and 25-18 versus the West. They average 112.1 points per game, 109 points allowed. Average point margin is plus 3.1. They are 4-6 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. The Sacramento Kings are the number 9 seed presently in the West at 31-28. 17.5 games behind the Thunder. 15-14 record at home, 16-14 on the road, 4-7 versus the Pacific. 21-19 against the West. They average 116.8 points per game while giving up 115.3. Average point margin is plus 1.5. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games, and they've won 3 in a row. The last team into the play-in tournament out west is the present 10 seed, and that's the Dallas Mavericks at 32-29. 17.5 games behind the Thunder, and their percentage points behind Sacramento for that 9 spot. The Mavericks are 19-12 at home, 13-17 on the road, 7-4 versus the Southwest, 22-20 versus the West. They average 115 points per game while allowing 113.4. Average point margin is plus 1.6. The Mavs are 6-4 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. As for the teams outside of the play-in tournament in the West, you've got the Phoenix Suns, who are just ice cold right now. 28-33 record, 21.5 games back of the Thunder for first in the West. This would put them last in the Pacific Division. They are 17-13 at home, but they have struggled on the road this year, 11-20. They are 7-4 in the Pacific Division, but 18-21 versus the West. They average 113.8 points per game while giving up 115.9 points per game. Average point margin is minus 2.1. This is why they're cold. They're 2-8 over their last 10, and they just lost their recent game. And they are presently 11th in the West. The Portland Trail Blazers are 12th with a record of 27-34, 22.5 games behind the Thunder. 16-14 at home, only 11-20 on the road. 5-8 versus the Northwest. 15-28 record versus the West. They average 110.5 points per game, give up 114.4. Average point margin is minus 3.9. They are 5-5 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. Dropping down to 13th in the West are the San Antonio Spurs at 25-34, 23.5 games out behind Oklahoma City. 14-14 at home, only 10-19 on the road. 3-10 record versus the Southwest, 18-22 overall in the West. They average 113.1 points per game while allowing 115.3. Average point margin is minus 2.2. They are 3-7 in their last 10 games, including a loss in their most recent game. 14th place is the New Orleans Pelicans, 17-44, 32.5 games behind the Thunder. 11-19 at home, but really bad on the road at 6-25. 3-9 record versus the Southwest, 11-28 record in the West. They average 111 points per game while giving up 118.7 points per game. Their average point margin is a Western Conference worst, minus 7.7. They are 5-5 in their last 10, and they did win their last matchup. And finally, rounding out the West, you have the Utah Jazz at 15-45. 34 games out behind the Thunder, 8-23 at home, 7-22 on the road, 2-9 record against the Northwest, which is just terrible. And their conference record is real bad too at 7-36. They average 112.4 points per game while giving up 119.5. Average point margin is minus 7. That should really be 7.1. They are 3-7 in their last 10, including a loss in their last game. So recapping the Western Conference playoff race. Oklahoma City at 49-11. The LA Lakers at 38-21. Denver at 39-22. Memphis at 38-22. Houston at 37-23, and the LA Clippers at 32-28 would be your top 6 in the West. Golden State at 32-28, Minnesota at 33-29, Sacramento at 31-28, and Dallas at 32-29 are your 7-10 teams. They would be in the play-in tournament. Phoenix finds themselves 4 games out behind Dallas for that number 10 spot in the West. And time is quickly running out on this team. Portland is 5 games out. San Antonio 6 games out. New Orleans is 15 out. And Utah is 16.5 games out of the play-in tournament. So there's the NBA standings and the playoff races through March 2nd. Now let's head over to the National Hockey League, where we'll look at their current standings and the playoff races there through March 2nd. And we'll start, as always, in the Eastern Conference. The Toronto Maple Leafs, they are red hot as of right now. They lead the Atlantic Division. 60 games played and a record of 38 wins, 20 losses, and 2 overtime losses for 78 points. 31 regulation wins, 38 regulation and overtime wins. And they're the only team in the league who hasn't played in a shootout. The Leafs are 20-11 at home, 18-9-2 on the road. They've scored 194 goals while allowing 172. Goal differential for the Leafs is plus 22. They are 8-2 in their last 10, including 5 straight wins. The defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers are in second place. 61 games played and a record of 37-21-3 for 77 points. 31 regulation wins, 33 in regulation and overtime. And they are a perfect 4-0 in the shootout. 19-10-2 at home, 18-11-1 on the road. They've scored 204 goals while allowing 171. Goal differential is plus 33. They are also 8-2 in their last 10, including 3 straight wins. So they're pretty much keeping pace with Toronto atop the Atlantic. Third place in the Atlantic are the Tampa Bay Lightning. 59 games played, 35-20-4 record for 74 points. 30 regulation wins, 34 in regulation and overtime, and 1-1 in the shootout. Very good home team, the Tampa Bay Lightning. 21-7 or 21-7-2 record at home, but kind of pedestrian on the road, only 14-13-2. They scored 211 goals while giving up 156. Their plus 55 goal differential is second in the Eastern Conference, and they are blazing hot right now. They haven't dropped a game. They haven't dropped their last 10 in regulation. They are 9-0-1 over their last 10, and they've won 8 in a row. So this is pretty much the hottest team in the NHL right now. The Detroit Red Wings remain in 6th place, or 4th place rather. 60 games played, 30-24-6 record for 66 points. 22 regulation wins, 27 in regulation and overtime, and they are perfect in the shootout as well at 3-0. They are 16-13-3 at home, 14-11-3 on the road. They've scored 176 goals, allowed 191. Goal differential is minus 15. They have fallen to 6-3-1 over their last 10, including back-to-back losses, both to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who we will be talking about soon. The Ottawa Senators and the Boston Bruins are in a points tie for 5th in the Atlantic. Ottawa played 59 games. They are 30-25-4. Boston played 62 games. They are 28-26-8. Both teams have 64 points. 23 regulation wins for the Senators versus 21 for the Bruins. 29 regulation and overtime wins for the Senators versus 28 for the Bruins. Ottawa is 1-1 in the shootout. Boston is 0-1. The Senators are 17-9-2 at home, 13-16-2 on the road. They've scored 166 goals while allowing 168. Goal differential is minus 2. They are 5-5 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. Meanwhile, the Bruins are 18-10-5 at home, 10-16-3 on the road. They've scored 167 goals while giving up 195. Goal differential is minus 28. They are 3-5-2 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. Now, Ottawa and Boston have the same amount of points. Hi, Anna. How are you? But the Senators play 3 fewer games than the Bruins. So this means that's a stat they use called games in hand. The team that has the fewest, that's played the fewest games, but has the same amount of points as a team they are tied with, automatically gets that tiebreaker. As you see here, Ottawa got their 64 points in 59 games, whereas Boston got their 64 points in 62 games. So that means the Senators have played three fewer games than the Bruins. Hope that made sense. The Montreal Canadiens trying to make things interesting, sitting in 7th place. 60 games played, 29, 26, and 5 record for 63 points. 21 regulation wins, 27 in regulation and overtime, and 2-2 in the shootout. They are 15, 12, and 4 at home, 14, 14, and 1 on the road. They've scored 180 goals, allowed 201. Average, or not average goal differential, but actual goal differential for Montreal is -21. They are 5-5 in their last 10, but they did win 4 straight games. Rounding out the Atlantic Division, you have the Buffalo Sabres. 58 games played, 24, 29, and 5 record for 53 points, which is the fewest points of any team in the Eastern Conference at least. 20 regulation wins, 22 in regulation and overtime, and 2-1 in the shootout. 15, 13, and 3 record at home, but only 9, 16, and 2 on the road. They scored 186 goals, allowed 198 for a goal differential -12. They are 6-4 in their last 10 games, but they did lose their last 2 games. Switching over to the Metropolitan Division, led by the Washington Capitals, top team in the East record-wise. 60 games played, 38, 14, and 8 record for 84 points. 33 regulation wins, 38 in regulation or overtime, but 0-3 in the shootout. They are 18, 7, and 6 at home, 27 and 2 on the road. 215 goals scored, 157 goals allowed. Goal differential is +58. They are 4, 3, and 3 in their last 10 games, but they've uncharacteristically dropped 3 games in a row. The distant second place team in this Metro Division are the Carolina Hurricanes. 61 games played, 35, 22, and 4 record for 74 points. 30 regulation wins, 35 in regulation or overtime, 0-2 in the shootout. They have a 23, 7-1 record at home, which is one of the best home records in hockey. But their road record, not so much, 12, 15, and 3. They've scored 195 goals while giving up 170. Goal differential is +25. They're only 4 and 6 in their last 10, but they did win their last game. In third place, you've got the New Jersey Devils. 62 games played, 33, 23, and 6 record for 72 points. 29 regulation wins, 32 in regulation or overtime, 1-1 in the shootout. They're 15, 10, and 4 at home, 18, 13, and 2 on the road. Scored 186 goals, allowed 154. Goal differential is +32. They are 5-5 in their last 10, but they did lose their last game. The Columbus Blue Jackets, who just swept a home from the Red Wings over the weekend, sit 4th in the Metro Division. 60 games played and a record of 30, 22, and 8 for 68 points. 22 regulation wins, 26 in regulation or overtime, 4-1 record in the shootout. 20 wins, 6 losses, 4 overtime losses at home, 10, 16, and 4 road record. They've scored 205 goals, allowed 196, goal differential is +9. They are 6, 3, and 1 in their last 10, including 4 straight wins. In 5th place are the New York Rangers. 60 games played, record of 30, 26, and 4 for 64 points, 28 regulation wins, 29 in regulation and overtime, 1-0 in the shootout. They are 15, 13, and 2 at home and on the road. They've scored and allowed 183 goals, which means their goal differential is 0. They are 6-4 in their last 10, including a win in their most recent game. The Philadelphia Flyers are in 6th place, 61 games played and a record of 27, 26, and 8 for 62 points. 17 regulation wins, 23 in regulation or overtime, and 4-3 in the shootout. So they've played more games in a shootout than any team in the league. 15-13-1 record at home, 12-13-7 on the road. They scored 180 goals while giving up 202. Goal differential is -22. They are 4-4-2 in their last 10 games and won their most recent. Down in 7th place are the New York Islanders. 59 games played and a record of 27, 25, and 7 for 61 points. 21 regulation wins, 25 in regulation or overtime, and 2-1 in the shootout. They are 14-13-2 at home, 13-12-5 on the road. They've scored 165 goals while allowing 176. Goal differential is -11. They're 5-5 in their last 10, including 2 straight wins. Rounding out the Metro Division are the Pittsburgh Penguins. 63 games played, 24-29-10 record for 58 points. 16 regulation wins, 23 in regulation and overtime, and they're horrible in the shootout, 1-5 this year. 14-13-5 at home, 10-16-5 on the road. They've scored 183 goals, allowed 233. Goal differential is -50. They are 3-5-2 in their last 10, including 2 straight losses. So taking a look at the Eastern Conference playoff race, Toronto, Florida, and Tampa Bay would be your top 3 in the Atlantic Division, while Washington, Carolina, and New Jersey would be your top 2, or rather top 3, in the Metro Division. Columbus and Detroit would be your 2 wildcard teams at the present time. With those 2 wins over the Red Wings, the Blue Jackets take over the number 1 wildcard spot while moving the Red Wings down to the number 2 wildcard spot. The Senators, Rangers, and Bruins all sit 2 points behind Detroit for that last wildcard spot. Montreal is 3 points out. Philly is 4 points out. The Islanders 5 points out. Pittsburgh is 8 points out. And Buffalo is 13 points out of the playoffs at the present time. Alright, so that's the Eastern Conference. Now we'll go over to the Western Conference. And we'll start in the Central Division, led by the best team in the NHL, the Winnipeg Jets. 61 games played, 42-15-4 record for 88 points, 34 regulation wins, 41 in regulation and overtime, and 1-1 in the shootout. I think they have the best record in all of hockey, at least on home ice. They're 23-5-4 at home, 19-10 on the road. They've scored 214 goals while allowing 143. Their goal differential is a league best +71. They sit with an 8-1-1 record in their last 10 games, but they did lose back-to-back games. In a distant second place in the Central are the Dallas Stars. 60 games played, 39-19-2 record for 80 points, 33 regulation wins, 37 in regulation and overtime, 2-1 in the shootout. They are 22-7-1 at home, 17-12-1 on the road. They've scored 206 goals, allowed 155, goal differential is +51. They are 7-2-1 in their last 10, including 2 straight wins. In third place, you've got the Minnesota Wild. 61 games played, 35-22-4 record for 74 points. 28 regulation wins, 33 in regulation or overtime, 2-2 in the shootout. They are 14-13-1 at home, 21-9-3 on the road. Scored 173 goals, allowed 176. Goal differential was -3. They are 5-5 in their last 10 games, but they did win their most recent matchup. The Colorado Avalanche are in fourth place. 61 games played, 35-24-2 for 72 points. 30 regulation wins, 34 in regulation or overtime, 1-1 in the shootout. They are 18-10-2 at home, 17-14 on the road. They've scored 198 goals, allowed 182. Goal differential is +16. They have a 6-4 record in their last 10 games, including 2 straight wins. The St. Louis Blues are down in 5th place. 62 games played, 29-27-6 record for 64 points, 21 regulation wins, 26 in regulation or overtime, and 3-1 in the shootout. 15-14-3 record at home, 14-13-3 record on the road. They've scored 179 goals, allowed 187. Goal differential is -8. They are 6-2-2 over their last 10, but they did lose their last game. The Utah Hockey Club slips to 6th place. 61 games played, 27-25-9 for 63 points. 19 regulation wins, 26 in regulation or overtime. 1-2 record in the shootout. 12-13-6 at home, 15-12-3 on the road. They've scored 172 goals, allowed 181. Goal differential is -9. They are 6-4 in their last 10, despite losing their most recent game. The beat goes on for the 7th place Nashville Predators, and I mean that in the worst way possible. 60 games played and a record of 21-32-7 for 49 points. 18 regulation wins, 20 in regulation and overtime, 1-0 in the shootout. They are 15-12-3 at home, 6-20-4 on the road. That's bad. They've scored 153 goals, allowed 201. Goal differential is -48. They are 3-7 in the last 10, including 2 straight losses. Rounding out the Central Division are the Chicago Blackhawks. 60 games played and a record of 18-35-7 for 43 points. 16 regulation wins, 17 in regulation and overtime, 1-2 in the shootout. They are 11-15-3 at home and real bad on the road as well, 7-20-4. They've scored 164 goals, allowed 213. Goal differential is -49. 2-6-2 record in their last 10, but they did win their most recent matchup. And wrapping up with the Pacific Division, the leaders are the Vegas Golden Knights. 60 games played, 36-18-6 record, 78 points, 33 regulation wins, 35 in regulation and overtime, 1-2 in the shootout. They are 22-6-3 at home, 14-12-3 on the road. They've scored 199 goals, allowed 166. Goal differentials +33. They are 5-3-2 in their last 10, including 2 straight wins. The Edmonton Oilers are in 2nd place. 60 games played, 35-21-4 record, 74 points. 26 wins in regulation, 35 in regulation or overtime, 0-1 in the shootout. 18-10-2 at home, 17-11-2 on the road. They've scored 195 goals, allowed 174. Goal differential is +21. They are 3-6-1 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. The Los Angeles Kings are in 3rd place. 58 games played, 31-19-8 record for 70 points, 28 regulation wins, 30 in regulation or overtime, 1-2 in the shootout. They are real good at home, 19-3-3 versus 12-16-5 on the road. They scored 166 goals, allowed 154 for a goal differential of plus 12. They are 5-3-2 in their last 10, including 3 straight losses. So they're kind of going the wrong direction. As are the Calgary Flames, who sit 4th in the Pacific. 60 games played, 28-23-9 for 65 points. 22 regulation wins, 25 in regulation or overtime. 3-1 record in the shootout. 17-10-4 record at home, 11-13-5 record on the road. They've scored 155 goals while allowing 176. Goal differential is minus 21. They are 3-5-2 in their last 10 games, and just like the Kings, they're on a 3-game losing streak. In 5th place, in a virtual points tie with the Flames, are the Vancouver Canucks. 60 games played, 27-22-11 record for 65 points. 21 regulation wins, 26 in regulation or overtime, 1-1 in the shootout. 11-10-7 record at home, 16-12-4 record on the road. They've scored 165 goals, allowed 184. Goal differential is minus 19. They are 4-5-1 in their last 10, including 2 straight losses. In 6th place, you've got the NHL, or not the NHL Ducks, but the Anaheim Ducks, currently sitting at NHL 500. 59 games played and a record of 26-26-7 for 59 points. 18 regulation wins, 23 in regulation or overtime, 3-2 in the shootout. They are 14-13-2 at home, 12-13-5 on the road. They've scored 154 goals, allowed 183. Goal differential is minus 29. They are 6-3-1 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. In 7th place are the Seattle Kraken. 61 games played, 26-31-4 record for 56 points, 21 regulation wins, 25 in regulation and overtime, and 1-3 in the shootout. 14-14-4 record at home versus 12-17 on the road. They've scored 180 goals, allowed 198, goal differentials minus 18 rather. They are 4-5-1 in their last 10, and they did win their most recent game. And rounding out not only the Pacific Division, but the entire NHL, wins and points-wise, are the San Jose Sharks. 61 games played and a record of 15-37-9 for 39 points. 11 regulation wins, 15 in regulation or overtime, and 0-4 in the shootout. Bad home and road records all around. 9-18-2 record at home, 6-19-7 record on the road. They've scored 157 goals, allowed 230. Goal differential is very, very bad, minus 73, which is the worst in the NHL. They are 1-6-3 in their last 10 games, including 8 straight losses. So yeah, the Sharks are ice cold right now. Recapping the playoff race in the West. Winnipeg, Dallas, and Minnesota would be your top 3 teams in the Central Division, while Vegas, Edmonton, and the LA Kings would be your top 3 in the Pacific Division. The 2 wildcard spots as of right now would go to Colorado and Calgary. Hey, Jimmy, what's going on? Who's going to win the Stanley Cup this year? Well, I was kind of thinking the Rangers would, but they kind of had that cold snap there mid-season. So I don't know if it's going to be them. It may be Washington, possibly Winnipeg, or even Vegas. One of those three, I think. Alright, so Colorado and Calgary would be your two wildcard teams. Vancouver, who has the same amount of points as Calgary and played the same amount of games as Calgary, they would be on the outside looking in. I think Florida can repeat if they have it all on that team. I think they do too. That's another team that could win the Stanley Cup, or in their case, repeat like you said. St. Louis is 1 point out. Utah is 2 points out. Anaheim is only 6 points out. Who saw that coming? Seattle is 9 points out. Nashville is 16 points out. Chicago is 22 points out. And San Jose is 26 points out of the playoffs as of March 2nd. And that's a look at the latest NBA and NHL standings through March 2nd and the playoff races in both leagues. Alright, so baseball season is just around the corner. Once they start playing, we'll be doing standings checks for Major League Baseball as well here in the next few weeks. The season starts March 27th. And also, I also have an announcement to make. The NCAA tournament selection show is coming up on Sunday, March 16th at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I will run down the entire tournament field live as it happens on March 16th, so make sure you join me for that. Thank you for all the information. I really appreciate it. Anytime, Jim. I do this every Monday, so yes, definitely tune in. And definitely like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. For now, Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching, and enjoy all the sports action this week. Peace out.